seatmate will be your translator. Okay, we have a Korean classmate here. Okay, so this afternoon, we will be having a master class. So actually po, kalahati lang halos yung nandito pa ngayon. Yung iba ay humabol lang because we just reserved 50 slots. So 50 po yung nag-reserve, after that nag-close. So maswerte yung iba, yung nakausap ko kanina na nakahabol pa din. So ang masterclass po ay public service program ng Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. At syempre, para mas ma-explain pa po kung ano talaga yung masterclass, nandito po ang aming ang second UPOU Chancellor, Dr. Lex Librero.
Salamat din sa dito na lang ako kasi mabuti na yung mapapagtaguan. I prepared some notes here because I did not like to make any mistakes, lalong-lalo na sa session ni Dr. Saludadez. Traditionally, the master class is usually a special discussion session with a master. So we hear of master classes with Helen Mirren or other known and experienced celebrities in the field of acting, or known and respected painters talking about their craft before students of painting, or if you wish to, the old Kung Fu masters teaching their special students the advanced art of Kung Fu. Well, it is not any different here, except that in the master classes at FICS, we do not necessarily have to have sessions with the masters. We do not call our experts masters because by definition, they are not. We call them thought leaders. They have the formal training and the appropriate experience as professionals in the field in which they share their wisdom. By definition, the master classes at FICS are open discussion sessions with thought leaders of selected subject matter areas. They discuss with participants the nuances of specific topics that may not have been given enough time in formal courses, but which they feel require more time to understand. Frequently, these discussions deal with special issues and concerns that are far deeper than many would think or understand. Today, we have a session on a particular subject matter that many love to talk about, but which many probably have limited knowledge of. I frequently hear students talking about qualitative research as if it were an ordinary thing in a research class. And yet, I have second thoughts about whether or not they have a complete grasp of its nuances as an approach to knowing. What do you do when you do qualitative research? What exactly do you have in mind when you talk of qualitative research? Why do you do qualitative research in the first place? What do you mean? What do you want to achieve? What are the bases for deciding that you need to do qualitative research? These are all philosophical issues, and you are going to learn them, all of these in this session. So feel comfortable and try to absorb as much as you can from the expert, our thought leader in qualitative research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Lex. Actually po yung master class, it started last year. During graduation po dito sa UPOU, napachikahan namin nila Sir yung isang alumni. Actually, siya yung president ng UPOU Alumni Foundation Inc. And from him, nalaman namin na merong ganong meron silang clamor for ganitong klaseng session from the thought leaders. So, kaya ginawa po namin ang masterclass. So for today po, meron po tayong mga participants from the College of Development Communication. Nasaan po sila? Okay, madami po. Actually, yung DevCom 399, Ma'am Chin, at saka DevCom 299 are supposed to be here. So part po ng seminar class ng DevCom. We also have participants from College of Public Affairs and Development. Madami din po. Palakpakan natin sila. Okay. Meron kasing naglagay ng graduate school. So I assume UPLB, graduate school, is it? Okay. Students from UPLB Graduate School. So Institute of Animal Science. We have one. Hi, sir. Welcome po. College of Human Ecology. We have somebody from Central Luzon, or two of them, or three, I think. Central Luzon State University. They are also, I think, one of them is UPOU student, currently enrolled. So nanggaling pa siyang CLSU ngayon, ma'am. And two of them are my classmates sa UPLB. So from DepEd, meron po ba? Tumating po ang taga DepEd? Okay, I heard galing pa silang Santa Rosa. Principal nila ay alumni natin. So that's how they get to know the So we also have somebody from Philippine Carabao Center National Headquarters. Welcome, sir. From University of Rizal. Nawala. Baka nag-CR. And syempre, from UPOU, our students, our faculty, and other guests, welcome po sa masterclass. Pero syempre, bago mag-start si Ma'am Jean, sorry Ma'am Jean, medyo matagal yung intro. Introduce ka po muna ng aming Dean, Dr. Alexander Flor, Dean of Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. Kinakabahan si Ma'am Jean sa sasabihin ni Sir.
Professor Emeritus Librero, my colleagues from other UP units, from other agencies, my fellow lifelong learners. Before I begin with an introduction of today's thought leaders, I'd like to mention a couple of things. No? First, I do not contradict my mentor, Dr. Librero, but this is one of the very few occasions that I will do that. You see, this master class, as conceived, does have a master. Alam niyo ba yung master chef? Di ba? Nanonood kayo ng master chef. May master sa master chef. The master class has one master, and that is Professor Emeritus Librero, who will be responding to the presentation of our thought leader. Okay? Pangalawa po, a little backgrounder about this particular event. Now, some of you are aware that the UPLB College of Development Communication is sponsoring a roundtable discussion on DevCom theorizing. Development Communication theorizing. And well, in light of that, our two master classes that will precede that event will be on theorizing. The first one being Understanding the Philosophical Assumptions of Qualitative Research by Dr. Jean Saludadez. And in a couple of weeks from now, I'm going to plug this in because, you know, it was mentioned in the last masterclass that this henceforth, we intend to introduce an intergenerational element or dimension in this activity. What do we mean by that? Well, naniniwala naman po tayo na ang thought leaders are not or they do not belong to only one generation, di ba? Hindi po yung nakakatanda gaya namin ang may monopoly ng yung tinatawag nga natin na kaalaman, no? And last I think it was a couple of months ago that we started experimenting with this format, you know, and we would want to implement it in a couple of weeks from now. We've invited thought leaders from 3 generations. Ano ba si Jean? Baby boomer ka ba, Jean? Gen X. Oh, ayun yun nun eh. Pero, we need to have a handle on this. So, well, anyway, 3 generations. The generation of Dr. Saludadez, to where I belong. The generation of Dr. Pamela Custodio, and the generation of Dr. Diego Maranan, one of our younger faculty members. They will all talk about their perspectives on theorizing, on the process of theorizing itself. You know? So we will have this in a couple of weeks from now. I think the tentative date is on the 22nd of November. In-announce na po namin kahit hindi sila umuoo para obligado na silang umattend. Okay. So we would be very honored if you could, if we could prevail upon you to attend the next master class, which I believe would be very exciting. Now to introduce our thought leader, she was my student. She, when she was still an undergraduate, I'm very enthusiastic to announce that because by saying that, it makes me a good teacher, di ba? Estudyante ko po siya sa undergraduate years niya at saka sa masters, no? And I was also part of her advisory committee. Dr. Jean Saludadez is a professor, a full professor of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, and also serving as affiliate faculty of our Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. Yung mga colleges nga sa amin ay ang tawag po namin ay faculties. Affiliate din si Jean sa Faculty of Education. She is currently the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration of the UPOU Open University, and she has been developing her scholarship along the agency framework and has enriched the teaching of her classes with the research she conducted and the papers, publications she produced along such a framework. We have a running joke, no? Kasi ako po ay taga Makiling School. Si Jean daw ay taga Montreal School, you know, the Montreal School of Thought or Organizational Communication, where the agency framework comes from. She finished her degrees of Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Development Communication at UPLB and obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in Organizational Communication from the University Putra, Malaysia. Ang dami pong expertise ni Ma'am Jean, ang daming publications, and we admire her for her scholarly intellectual ties with the community of practice nga, no? She really belongs to the Montreal School at binibisita niya yon every now and then, and she does not every opportunity that she has to link up with her intellectual counterparts, she takes these opportunities, you know, by regularly attending the International Communication Association conferences and presenting papers. Madami po tayong itatanong sa kanya ngayon. Makikinig lang po kami. Understanding the philosophical assumptions of qualitative research. Para naman pangatawanan na natin yung mga titulo natin. Kung tayo ay anyway sa FICS ang programa po natin ay Doctor of Communication, sina Ma'am Buera, Hello. Yes, well, the majority of doctoral degree holders here, with the exception of Dr. Celet Habito over there, no, are PhDs, doctors of philosophy. Kaya paninindigan na nga natin at ngayong hapon ay sa philosophical assumptions po tayo ng qualitative research. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, it's an honor for me to introduce Dr. Jean Saludadez.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Sir Sandy and Sir Lex. Don't be surprised if we have insider jokes between and among us, because we are colleagues in the university, but I always feel that I'm a student of the two of them. For this topic, I would have a very personal take of it. That is, as I understand the philosophical assumptions of qualitative research, and as I teach it, and as I do, meaning as I do my research. So this is a very personal take, as I said. And as mentioned, my discipline really is organizational communication. But I am very grateful for my training in development communication. So as an organizational communication person, my my emphasis always is in how things are organized. And so this is how I would organize the sharing this afternoon. First, I would share with you the organization of knowledge in communication as a field of study. And so I apologize for those who are not in the communication field. My assumption is, maybe false assumption, this master class is for those who are in communication. So this, and anyway, that's what I can share. For those who are not with this field, I hope that you will still get something out of this talk. And then from that organization of knowledge, we hope to move to the philosophical assumptions of qualitative research. So when we talk about philosophical assumptions, what sinabi ni Sir earlier, papanindigan natin yung pagiging nating doctor graduates or having the degree of the Doctor of Philosophy. But within the qualitative research, this refers to certain dimensions. No, these are bombastic words, but these are not really difficult to understand. First, on the ontological assumption. When we say ontological, it refers to the nature of reality. If you look at us now as a master class, what is the reality of a master class? So that is what it means when we say the ontological assumption. What are the assumptions on or what is the assumption on the nature of reality? No? The other one is epistemological assumption. So this is another bombastic word, but this is really very simple. This is the assumption on what counts as knowledge. What do we know? And how do we know? So these are assumptions. No? What do we consider? What counts as knowledge? There will be different assumptions on what counts as knowledge. And the other one is the teleological assumption. When we talk about teleology, we talk about the purpose. So there are also assumptions on the purpose. And those assumptions would differ between the quantitative and the qualitative. So we would like to discuss that. And also, axiological is another one. Is the value. I may not deal with that much here, just to mention here at the introduction of what axiological here. So it refers to the value. What is the value? What are what are the assumptions in terms of the value of what's being done? And the other one is another heavy word, the praxeological assumption. So the nature of what is being studied. All of those would be, hopefully, would not be, sound very deep or very high. These are some things that you can relate as we go along. And then I will, if there is time, and possibly talk about the post-qualitative research. This year I've attended since can recall. One in the University of in the U.S. In a University of Mexico, New Mexico, and Albuquerque, and the focus there is the post-qualitative research. But I remember that last year I attended another conference. I cannot recall where, with a number of conferences that I have attended. The talk discussion now is on the post-qualitative. So what is this post-qualitative? But of course, you would have some idea of it as it relates to the more the postmodern thought. But I will try to give you some qualification, and that when it's applied to qualitative research. And then, yeah, so that's how the talk is planned to be organized. Is organized, and I plan to do it that way. And I've also received questions from the master class. I think maybe around 20 questions. So I would like to give more time to that from you. I don't know who among you send those questions, but it's a summary of questions that you want to be answered on this talk. Now, the reason why I said that, I'd like to end with that because I really don't know whether what I have said already answered your question or not. So to give chance to those who, to really give opportunity for those who have the questions when you come over here, we will try to answer them. Those that are not answered by the talk. Now, just to tell you that I also didn't think that this is a very formal kind of thing. You know, I did not pay much attention to the preparation for the master class. I was thinking that, okay, this is something that I really have to share with them what I know as a personal take of it. But now when I saw all of you here, oh, I was thinking, oh, suddenly I have a false assumption that this is for calm, as I said earlier, and also for there are people here who really are serious about listening to the assumptions of qualitative research, even if they are not in communication field. So, but what I prepared is, as I said, focus on the communication discipline. So what I will be showing next is what I have used in DevCom. Who invited me in DevCom in April, last April? What is it, 399? So may mga 399 ba dito? If there are those who have attended that, so you will be seeing the same material that I've shown there. But of course, but wala mukhang apparently wala. Oh, that's a good thing. But I don't know whether there in the cyberspace, if you are listening, I hope if I repeat what I said, then that was something for your further learning or for you to recall what was discussed last April in DevCom. The next. All right, so view, sabi ni Edison, should be full screen. Tama na. All right. Yan, sorry because I just captured the screen of my laptop when I put it there. As I said, we belong to the communication discipline. When I say organization of knowledge, there are many ways of organizing knowledge on communication. This is a 1997 organization of knowledge of communication drawn up by Craig. No? So those who have taken 310, you are familiar with Craig's traditions of communication theory. Oh, I mentioned earlier that this is a personal take, meaning what I will be sharing with you, as I said earlier, is how I teach it and how I do it. So my materials I've taken from Com 310, Communication Theory and Practice at the Doctoral of Communication, Com 390, Communication Research, ano nga bang Com 390, and Com 391, Communication Research Methodology, Communication Research Paradigms, Com 390. So what I'll be sharing with you are those materials that I used in those classes. In fact, what I did was to capture the screen. So one of the very basic materials that I use in ComTreat, because this is how the communication field is organized according to the theoretical traditions. No? When we talk of theory, we talk about an explanation, yeah? How phenomena are explained. So there are many ways of explaining phenomena. And there are, in the 1997 article of Robert Craig, of Bob Craig, there are 7: the rhetorical tradition, the semiotic tradition, the phenomenological tradition, cybernetic tradition, psychological tradition, sociocultural tradition, and critical tradition. The 8, when he had another article in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, there's this 8 tradition on the pragmatic tradition of communication theory. So we are talking here of communication theory. Now, we are not talking here of traditions of communication. This is traditions of communication theory. The way when we say traditions, they have their own language, they have their own way of approaching communication as the way they problematize it. When we say problematize, when they focus it on their research, no, the way they advance knowledge, they problematize. So these traditions have different way, and they have their own languages. So I can see here Jaya, one of our students in DCOM, and so you must be familiar with Triton. You will have a quiz afterwards to check on whether you remember those. Anyway, that you have enough of it. So this is the organization of knowledge on communication theory. So hindi ito of what communication is. So it doesn't talk about of what communication is, but it has its own way of theorizing. So there is no one way of defining communication. Each one of them has its own language, has its own way of problematizing, theorizing communication. For instance, the rhetorical tradition, how does it theorize It theorizes communication as a practical art of discourse. So if you come here, like you would like to look at the master class from the different traditions, from the lenses of the different traditions of communication theory. So what I'm doing now is a rhetorical act. So that tradition would only look at that rhetorical act. When we say rhetorical act, it refers to the intent. When you say something, it's not something that does not have a purpose. There's always an intent. Why did I organize this talk this way? So that's my rhetorical act. When I say my discipline is organizational communication, that is a rhetorical act. And a rhetorical act always has what? Someone listening. Ay, pag nag-rhetorical act ako by myself, isipin nila nasira na ulo ko, right? So the rhetorical tradition would always look at that rhetorical act as there's another person or an audience listening to it. So each one of these traditions would have its own way of problematizing, theorizing. Semiotic is intersubjective mediation of signs. So me sitting here, you sitting there, and we arrange this way. There's a symbol to it. We know that the one who is sharing knowledge always sits is a symbol that you sit at the center, or you are standing at a podium, because those are symbols of authority. There are symbols that mediate for us to make sense. What if every one of us here talks all at the same time, no? So anong mangyayari? So that's how there are symbols here that tell that, okay, guys, in the meantime, you listen to me, because I was the one invited to speak, not you. So it's me talking. That's a symbol. Me holding at this time this microphone. No? So then phenomenological experience of otherness. Actually, it's more like experience of self and others in dialogue. I always use this as an example. One of my advices, I would like to study risk communication. Normally, well, not normally, in the cybernetic tradition, in the information transmission view, evacuation and eruption no would be dependent the evacuation of people when Mount Mayon for any volcano erupts depends on the volume of information no transmitted to the people. So this student look at it from the phenomenological point of view, the experience of self and others in dialogue. So based on their experience of the eruptive events of Mount Mayon from 1967 to 2016, tama ba? That was the last time that Mount Mayon erupted. So they give their stories of eruption, and based on those stories, the evacuation action, the act of evacuating was surfaced. When do they evacuate? It's when Mount Mayon, Mount they say call Magayon, no, uh, is communicating with them. When the smoke of Mount Mayon is white, Mount Mayon is communicating. I'm still okay. I'm sweetie to you. You don't evacuate yet. But when the smoke is dark, black, and there's a rumbling noise, Mount Mayon is communicating to them that I'm angry with you. Run for your life. So normally, the risk communication is not seen that way. You know, it is always the T-box because the student is one of the officials in T-box, and it's always how much information has T-box sent to the residents. That's how it's studied. So this one is a different way of looking at it that can still be studied. All of this are, they have same value. No one explanation or theorizing is more important or superior over the others or inferior. There's no such thing. They're all valid theorizing. So those are the things, because we are able to provide an explanation that is not available, not yet, that is not given. Because what is research? How do we look at research? Research is, it's a process. This is a process of knowing the unknown. So meaning, walang unknown kung hindi mo siya intindihin in terms of known. So dapat may known na. So in that example that I gave, the known there is the volume of information that's transmitted to the residents, define or causes, like it's a factor for evacuation on what time they would evacuate. So you connect you relate the magnitude of information given and the eruption behavior. So this, that's what is commonly known. That's how theorizing has been done for many years. But you give an alternative explanation of risk communication, and you can explain it using the phenomenological tradition and so all others, no? Psychological, sociocultural, and the critical. The critical, maybe some of you are familiar here. I see some faces here. Maybe you are into the feminist tradition of research, you know, social research. So there's a critical tradition. It problematizes or theorizes communication as a discursive reflection, because the intent of critical tradition is to emancipate. So you have to, if we look at this, if we want to be emancipated from M's, joke M's. So we have to have a reflection on how the master's class is done. So that's how whose point, whose voice is marginalized in this talk by the master. I don't know whether I can call myself the way, but it's more of that. Whose meaning, whose voice is heard, whose is marginalized. So this is a discursive reflection. And many others, the social cultural is within my field, is the reproduction of social order. If you look at it this way, this is the teacher and the student in that social order. It's always the teacher on top, the student below. But of course, in an open education, we are co-creators of knowledge. So we transgress that order. We put the student on a same level as a teacher. So at UPOU, we value what our students say because they have the practical knowledge. While the university has the theoretical knowledge, our students have the practical knowledge. So you can reverse the social order in terms of education at the graduate level. So social psychological, I think this is very common, very familiar to you. This expression, interaction, influence. For instance, why did you come here? So what the behavior of coming here? So what would explain it? I don't know why did you come here. I would have this. I can have some hypothesis that itong tao dito on my right, pinilit niya kayo pumunta dito. So the X and the Y, the behavior is affected by certain stimuli, certain factors, no? The X's. So that's how the communication theory is organized. The knowledge communication theory is organized in terms of tradition. Anyway, this talk is not about the tradition of communication theory. I just would like to tell you that this is how we approach doctoral communication here at the university. When we teach our ComTree 10, we teach them according to the traditions of communication theory because this is how knowledge is organized. So what's the value of it? Because this is one way of, it's a device through which we hope students would be able to understand the field they are in, the doctor of communication. So it's a mnemonic device, it's a heuristic device even. It's a device, it's a way for us to teach. It's how we organize it. Now, I don't know whether you can, now let's move on to ComTree 90. This is now the organization of knowledge in communication as a field of study. So yung una kong sinabi as the organization of knowledge of communication theory, how communication is problematized, theorized. Here, how communication is studied. So magkaiba na siya, no? The other one is the theorizing. How to theorize it? How do you explain? This one is when this is the creation of knowledge. When you produce knowledge on communication, which is the process of knowing the unknown, research, that is through the research, this is how knowledge in communication as a field of study is organized. Here, ako naman, I'm using now Mambi's old article also. I think this was in 19, I didn't put there the year, maybe in the previous paragraph that I didn't put. So here you look at the different, you look at the knowledge creation as a discourse. No? Discourse is a metaphor. This is a good metaphor for communication because what is discourse? Discourse is a system of possibilities, according to Foucault, is a system of possibilities for the creation of knowledge. No? So each of these discourses has its own system of creating knowledge, doing a study on communication, not theorizing. No? This is in studying. So, napakaliit, sorry but there are four. According to Mambi, the discourse of representation, discourse of understanding, discourse of suspicion, and discourse of vulnerability. So why is this knowledge on communication research organized this way, or on communication study organized this way? So this for discourses requires how do you understand it? You have to understand it in terms of the subject object position. I'll talk to it later. The subject referring to the knower. The researcher is the subject. diba, baliktad yung pagkaintindi natin sometimes. We talk of our participants or respondents, we look at them as the subject. But in the apprehension of the discourse of possibilities for creating knowledge in communication, it's the other way around. The subject, my subject position. When we talk of a subject position, for instance, I see oblique frontal because this is my subject position. This is how I see oblique. I'm not taking an objective position here. It's a subject position, meaning I don't see what's in the back of oblique. Of course, I know what's there. But this is the subject position, meaning you only see certain dimensions of reality. And so therefore, you cannot claim an objectivity. So a researcher cannot claim an objectivity because your subject position vis-a-vis in relation to your object. So what is your object? It's your study, the topic of your study, the participants to your study are your objects. You are the subject. So that's how you understand. This is how the relationship between the subject and the subject object positioning are apprehended by each of these discourses. So as I said, the subject refers to the knower or the researcher, and the object refers to what is to be known or the object of research. So in our context, in the context of those in the com, our object is communication. So for others, you have a different object, subject-object position. So, but as far as we are concerned, we are looking at communication. It becomes an object to us. If you look at oblation communication, this is how we look at it. This is your subject position. So you have a different view of communication depending on your subject position. So nag-iiba-iba, no? Yung nasa baba, ay, nasa baba, yung nasa likod would have a view of me differently. Those who are in the cyberspace would have a different subject position vis-a-vis me, no? Kasi iba yung kanilang subject position. But you know, it's just that, not just the physical positioning. It is more on even your way of looking at things. And I think one of you questioned it, posed that question that later I'll try to answer. So what are these discourses? What are these discourses in communication study? So how is discourse of representation different from the discourse of understanding? So the discourse of representation here, the subject position of the knower, the researcher, is bifurcated or separated from the object position of what is to be known. Here, communication is assumed as a conduit or vehicle for already formed ideas. You can say this is a cybernetic view or the socio-psychological view of this. The framing, the theoretical framing would be within those two traditions because there's this position, there's already this understand knowledge, no? There's already, it's a conduit or vehicle for already formed ideas. Something, the act of communication and the world about which one is communicating remain firmly separated. Kasi, di ba, meron ng risk source, receiver, for instance. So there's this channel where the information will pass through. So they're fixed. They don't change. Thus, the process of knowledge production is through the scientific method. And the knowledge produced is a representational mirroring of an already existing world. So marami tayong ginagawa yan dyan. For instance, if you want to understand, if you want to explain attendance to a master class, so meron ng what theory would you like to use that is already there? Yung meron ng formed na yung ideas. And how would you explain this from the educational theories point of view, yung mga teacher, no? So like the SR, the stimulus response. So they are a representational mirroring of an already existing world. Existing world na kasi because the theory is already there. It has explained already what is happening. It's a matter of you representing it in the form of you measure certain things. You have the survey to measure what is already there. No, how many people are here? How many yung stimulus niyo, for instance, nakita yung the TARP or the Facebook announcement. That's the stimulus. So the response is to come and attend the master class. So nandun yung it is pinuproduce mo siya. It nire-represent mo yung representational mirroring of an already existing world. Because it's you can see it, just represent it. In the discourse of understanding, there's a subject-object bifurcation. What does that mean? So the researcher is not part of the study. Meron kang theory na you want to test, and that theory, you have to have a data collection instrument. And then you go to ask people to answer that, and you are not part of it. Because the moment you become part of it, it's biased already. So you have to ensure, when we were taught in our research class in the master's program and the bachelor's, there's this threat to validity. You have to address that. You ensure, because that's the scientific method. There are no other variables that explain why you're here. It's not the stimulus. It's not the TARP that can explain. You're seeing the TARP. So there is something else that would explain. There should not be threat to the validity that is the TARP. That is the cause of this, the factor of you coming here, attending this class. So before pala ako ay mag-continue, parang may mga nakakulot ang noo. Any question? Do you want clarification on that? So I would tell you that while you're thinking your question, so this is the common way of doing communication research when we were young. No, we have the hypothesis. I'm being trained in science. We are very adept and very skillful. We have the knowledge in the use of the scientific method. And when I did my undergrad, I have to make sure that it's the puppet that's the source of knowledge of the young people, of the kids, on nutrition. So there's a hypothesis that what increases the knowledge is exposure to certain puppet character. So you can imagine, lumalumang tao na ako, no? And in the masters, there's this learning package. So tanda-tanda yan ni Dr. Flor sa ni Sir Lex, because si Sir Lex and chair co-members Dr. Flor, of whether that learning package increases knowledge on management. So klaro yun, there's this hypothesis that you have to test, no? So because it is, as I said, the representation is the process of through the scientific method. Nagdi-derive ka na ng knowledge. There's this idea already, an existing world told to us na by a certain theory that you just have to represent in that particular study. All right. Sabi ko, baka may tanong kayo, tapos ako rin nagsalita. May tanong kayo? any or any addition? All of you can add. There's no monopoly of knowledge here. It so happen lang na ako ang pinaupo dito ni Em, so ako nagsasalita ng marami. But this doesn't mean that you cannot share what the silence means. Okay, using the semiotic tradition, how do I explain the silence? The silence that symbolizes I should move on because there's no more time, or no interest whatsoever. I hope not. So maybe I have to keep silent. Wala. Okay. Kasi kulang na rin yung oras, no? So there's a question, we move on to the second discourse. This is a discourse of understanding. What is this discourse of understanding? The subject position of the knower is in productive dialectical tension. You are part of the research. No? You are there, like if you would like to understand the meaning of attending a master class. No? It has to be you yourself attending it. Me as a speaker of a master class, I would have my own understanding of what a master class is. Your own understanding of what a master class is. So I'm part of it. When I would like to understand what a master class is, I cannot separate myself from being part of it, because you cannot understand something you don't experience yourself. So the subject position of the knower is in productive dialectical tension. No matter what is your position to it, you are part of that productive and dialectical tension with the object position of what is being known. So what is the object? What is the master class? So I'm part of it. No? Here, communication is assumed as essentially symbolic. No? So as I said, you look at it as part is in a graduate education in a university. And we were given a glimpse of the origin of it in the past. Yung sinabi ni Dr. ni Sir Lex, tapos na inobject ni Sir Sandy. It's just, these things are, sino yung mga master, no? Nasabi nga ni Sir, hindi naman niya ino-object lagi si Sir Lex. But this time, I think hindi naman niya in-object. He just has his own way of explaining it, yung thought leaders, no? Parang yun yung kanyang own meaning of master class. So, yung kay Sir Lex is a very formal way of looking at a master class. The way we understand what a master is. So, yung kay Sir Sandy, iba yun. So, you see, if we study us, that's the discourse of understanding. When you study, when you study what the very phenomenon where you are a part of. So here, communication, as I read earlier, is assumed as essentially symbolic or constitutive of what exists. Thus, the process of knowledge production is dialogical, and the knowledge produced is an understanding of that lived world. Dialogical, kasi nag-uusap tayo about it. Nagsalita si Sir Lex, nagsalita si Sir Sandy, tapos nagsasalita ako, is dialogic, no? The way you understand, like ako, I just have a very vague idea of the classical view of what a master class is. No, see, but I heard it from Sir Sandy in many of the faculty meetings. So what I understand it is how I understand from how I heard it from Sir Sandy. So, nandun is the dialogical production of the lived world, is an understanding of that world. That is very, but as you can see, this is a communication apprehension of understanding, knowledge creation, in the words of Dr. Floor, knowledge production. In the discourse of suspicion, the third one, the subject-object position of the knower and what is to be known, what communication is, and the process of knowledge production are the same as the discourse of understanding. You're part of it. Now you're part of it, but it differs in terms of the knowledge produced. If on the discourse of understanding, that knowledge production and dialogical and the produced knowledge is an understanding of that lived world. Here, it differs in the knowledge produced. If the discourse of understanding produces a surface level meaning, what a master class is, or understanding of the lived world, the discourse of suspicion produces the deeper level power structure of such lived world. For instance, who decides what would be the topic here in the master class? So, not ends. So the structure, what we're saying here is that is who makes that decision? When, what topic to be discussed? When would that be held? there is a power structure behind it. No, so many of the feminist studies, of the marginalization of women, for instance, in a certain discourse, in the representation in media, they are mainly for the discourse of suspicion. No, they are under some of the media studies that you can see. Now, the last one in the discourse of vulnerability, there is no privileged position for the know. Oh, before I move there. So what happens now to the knower? The knower there always takes the position, that subject position, that he or she should emancipate whoever is marginalized. No? Laging ang intent would always be emancipation. Kasi bakit suspicion? Kasi nandun yung the suspicion there refers to you the prevailing knowledge. You don't believe. You suspect that it promotes certain ideas. No, meron niyang piniprivilege na voice. So ganun yung discourse of suspicion. You always have a question on the power structure, there's always the assumption of our imbalance, no? Hegemonic. Laging hegemonic. Teacher here, student there. So laging hegemonic. Teacher may knowledge, student walang knowledge. Sorry, konting knowledge. So hegemonic siya. Laging that's the assumption of the discourse of understanding. So what the discourse of understanding wanted to do is to surface what is marginalized. So ang knower doon, part siya. Part ako of the master class. And I want to pull down M's as the power here. Parang tipong gano'n, no? But M's is just a joke, no? But the point there is, the subject position of the knower cannot be considered like it is already defined, no? Meron kang intent to empower. In the discourse of vulnerability, wala. Nobody ako as a knower. Doon sa previous, merong certain privilege din yung knower. Kasi siya ang mag-i-emancipate eh. So, may privileged position din siya. So, yung discourse of vulnerability, ipo-pull down niya yon. Kayo nga sa critical tradition, sa discourse of suspicion, nilalagay nyo nga yung sarili nyo in a privileged position as emancipator eh. So, yon ginagawang vulnerable. Yung what the discourse of suspicion said to be the power structure. So this is the postmodern stance. There is no privileged position for the knower vis-a-vis what is to be known. I don't know. I'm here just like any one of you. I'm not a master. I'm not a thought leader. Sorry, Dr. Flor. If you are going to use the discourse of vulnerability to study this, I am not a thought leader. All of us are thought leaders. So, ganun ang discourse of vulnerability, no privileged position. Communication becomes impossible, is political for self-deconstruction. Kaya katulad doon, diniconstruct ko na yung sarili ko, I'm not a thought leader. No? So, then communication becomes impossible. So, I mean, impossible na yon. Merong communication, but always being revised, no? It's always being revision. You revise that you are not a thought leader. You continue to talk about understanding the philosophical assumption, but that is being revised as we interact. It looks at existing processes of knowledge production as vulnerable. Yun na nga. Yung alam ko, pag yung mga sinasabi ko ngayon, doubt it. Ganyan ang discourse of vulnerability. You doubt what I said. And I myself doubt what I said. So that's why communication becomes impossible. Ni-revise mo, ni-reconstruct mo, deconstruct mo what you're saying and where you are. So it's always vulnerable to questioning. Questioning niya ang discourse of representation. There is no grand narrative, walang knowledge, walang theoretical explanation of things. That is the theoretical explanation. Gagawin din niyang vulnerable yung understanding na life is not actually, there's no such thing as essence of meaning. There's no such thing. Later on, I'll share with you na yung mga philosophical assumptions. And so there's no such thing as meaning that is essential. No, the essence, the things that are what you could consider to be how things are seen. It's not something that is fixed. Iko-question yan. And then the discourse of suspicion, sabi ko na sa inyo na, vulnerable. So, it opens up other possible means of knowing. Kaya gusto ko rin yung postmodern in the sense that when I question myself, what I know, it creates something, a different way of looking at things. I doubt my own knowledge. So I continue to do work related to explanation of distance education, which is what I'm doing now. Na-explain ko how distance education is how education is possible at a distance. So I continue to question the way I do my research. So that's the discourse of vulnerability. And the knowledge it produces is in what way communication, identity, and power intersect. Wala, nagbabago. There's no such thing as a power imbalance na assumed ng discourse of suspicion. Walang ganon. So, ang pinoproduce nun is ang identity. I don't know whether you know me, but like yung construction of me as a person, I know my students would have their own construction of me, but that would change. No? After na mag-iiyak na sila, yung mga advices ko na dami-daming luha na, lalaki at babae, talagang dami-dami ng balding na iipon sa kanilang mga cubicles. At hindi so that may change. Diba nakita nila ako, hindi nga pala siya nakakatakot. So something like that, my identity, my communication, and the way they look at a teacher, for example, will not be fixed. It continues to be revised. Okay. Questions? Wala pa tayo sa topic of this. But this is the context kasi. Pero kasi ding intindihin yung methodological dimension without understanding the way knowledge production, knowledge creation, communication as a field of study, or communication research is organized. No? So I really am grateful to Craig, to Mambi. They are my teachers. When it comes to the organization of knowledge, no? Because I would always be grateful for the knowledge that I have learned from my bachelor's and my master's and even my PhD. So, next. Yeah, this is ano lang to, just maybe in passing lang to, no? So, because my discipline is organizational communication, organizational communication, in Com340, this is how I organize naman yung knowledge or the approaches to studying org-com. So Sir Sandy, I will not talk about this is because this is researching org-com. Yung sinasabi ni Sir Sandy na Montreal School, those are the schools of thought of organizational communication. If there are traditions of communication theory, mayroon tinatawag na schools of thought of organizational communication. So yung schools of thought na yan is the functional school, no? Ito naman, maintindihan nyo ito in terms of the relationship between communication and organization. Sa functional school, ang organization is fixed, no? Ang communication is ang organization is considered separate from communication. So it's like a container na merong tubig na that's the metaphor, na ang communication flows. Kaya marami dyan yung information, yung word na cascading, very common yan, even in UP. You know, we just have the recent system people meeting, and the goals for 2018 cascaded to the individual units. So, kasi merong nang tinatawag na organization na ang communication doon nagfo-flow. That's the functional school. Ang communication it functions, no? To be able to accomplish the purposes of certain goal. Ang functional school yan. Ang interpretive critical school, yun yung communication produces organization. Or the other way around. Ang ano nun is like, what is UP Open University? So ang production na yon is how I look at it, as I interpret it. You know, sa akin, ang Open University is this is the place where I am able to develop and pursue my my theoretical pursuits, able to develop my theoretical pursuits. This is ganyan. But of course, others, dito sa OU, pag narinig nila yun, Doc G, nosebleed, nosebleed. So that's how they would look at it, no? So, nipoproduce ko yung Open University in the stories I tell. Because it's interpretive. Ang critical naman would look at it as, so I have a very, how would I say? I have that view of Open University for me is a place where I advance my knowledge. For others, hindi yun ganun tinitingnan. So ang production nila ng Open University is where you don't develop your knowledge. So did you see that? Ang organization is not fixed. Ito ay pinoproduce in the interpretation of people. Yan. And those interpretation, kino-consider yan na kuni-question yan. Sa Montreal School, Dr. is it looks at communication as constitutive of organization. So you look at University of the Philippines Open University as a text that is a text of a conversation. So pareho lang siya. Maiintindihan mo ang isang organization in the conversation. Hindi niya pinuproduce yun. Ang ginagawa niya dun is emergent siya. As people, in the conversation that I have with Dr. Flor, so ang Montreal School is emergent yan. What is that Montreal School? Ngayon narinig ko, sabi niya, I take the effort to visit. The Montreal School is not a place. This is a group of scholars who have the same view of organization, of communication and organization, that communication is constitutive of that you cannot understand organization without looking at communication, cannot be separated. So ganyan yung apprehension niya. So but how is it studied? So as I said, that's how it's organized. But how it's studied in terms of the reasoning, the deductive approach, and palapit na kasi ako dun sa ating main, the deductive approach, when there's a theory, alam natin yan, there's a theory that you test. The theory, ito naman, organize ito in terms of the relationship between theory and data. Sa deductive approach, yung theory defines what data will be collected. Kasi i-define nyo na yung variables that you would like to, the relationship of variables that you would like to test, subject to a test, no? So in this approach, knowledge is created by testing theory through the data collected. Kaya nga tinitest mo siya can that explain in this particular, using this sample, would that be true to this certain population? In the inductive approach, the collected data generates the theory. So walang theory to start with. And this is where the qualitative research, this is the reasoning of the qualitative research. The collected data generates the theory. So instead of theory testing, theory generation. In this approach, knowledge is created by generating theory from the data. Kung yung isa, what would be considered as knowledge, the relationship among and between variables, di ba? Ang sabi doon, knowledge is created by testing theory through the data collected. So at a certain alpha probability na what happens in this particular sample is true to this population can be explained by these variables. Kaya gabi tayo ng correlation, we make use of the regression, we make use of path analysis, we use SEM. No? Now, but it doesn't have an inductive approach. Again, for instance, yung ginawa ng estudyante about explanation of risk communication, it's an inductive approach because there are data. The narratives of the people nag-generate siya ng theory on the relationship between eruption in the act of evacuation. Paano mo ma-explain ang evacuation? So you explain it in terms of their relationship with Mount Mayon. Paano siya nagko-communicate? So nag-generate ka ng ganitong theory. In the abductive approach, theory and the data are mutually defining. It may be that the data may generate theory and the generated theory may lead to further data. So di ka nagbibigin in anywhere. Could be theory, meron kang gustong explanation na ibigay. No? You can begin with that, or you can begin with the data. Now, like in what I'm doing, how do you explain how is education possible at a distance, for instance? So, hindi ka nagbegin with any theory. Ako lang, because I'm in an open university, I should be able to explain how education is possible at a distance. So, wala akong tinest na theory or generated theory, but yung abduction, you provide the best possible explanation. So that is abductive approach. Note this word some. It denotes the use of theories that are now within the field of ORCOM. In contrast to the deductive approach, the theory to be tested is in ORCOM or theory. In the article, the authors describe as the speculative, creative side of research, no? In contrast to deductive and inductive approaches, which you can say are conventional. Right? That's my own organization for me to easily remember. Conventional, deductive, inductive, creative, abductive. Just for the authors further characterize the approach as continually returning to explain, but also striving to enunciate original theoretical intuition. So siguro doon napapasok yung sinasabi ni Sir Sandy na thought leaders. So sir, baka dito po. So in that regard, parang you become a thought leader because I make use of that abductive approach. I try to provide a possible explanation, the quote-unquote best possible explanation, an explanation for what you observe. So this is the nature of knowledge, striving to enunciate original theoretical intuitions that will encourage us to look at the world in new ways. Thus, the nature of knowledge created is theoretical, grounded in the practical. Because when I theorize, distance education is in what I do as a teacher in an open university. Okay, so now let's move on. Okay, now understanding the philosophical assumptions. So we go now to COM 390. So as you know, there are major paradigms of communication research. As I said, there's no one way of doing research, research being a creative process and contextual. Here, there's no one, they are valid means of knowing. Quantitative is a valid means of knowing. Qualitative is a valid means of knowing. So in quantitative communication, so both of these paradigms have their own philosophical assumptions. And I understand this is the reason why you come here. Sorry, ha? It took me an hour for you to arrive at that. Okay, important. No. Don't have a notes. So how are they different? So as I said, ontology is the assumption on the nature of things. Let's use master class. For instance, you want to explain attendance to the master class. A quantitative research would assume this reality as objective. You can count the number of persons listening. You can see there's one person in front talking. Objective. What I see, you see. No? You cannot doubt it. And sabi mo may 50. So you cannot doubt that there are 50 people in this room because it's objective. Something that you can count. Your eyes can see, your nose can smell. If I taste you, I can taste you. If I touch you, I know that you are cold, for instance, no? Or if I you know. So if this is something that you can touch by your five senses, it can be observed, or can be observed, can be touched, can be something objective. If you say that I'm using a Mac, nobody can question that. I'm using a Mac here in front. It's very objective. So there is one singular reality. How about qualitative research? The ontological assumption of qualitative research, reality is multiple, not singular, is subjective and multiple. Bawa, I asked Ma'am Bench, siya nandito, her story would be different from Pam's story. No? So multiple yung reality na yun. Iba-iba. Because it's subjective, reality is subjective. Your take of a master class is different from someone, the others in this room. Take of what a master class is. It's a something that you don't see. I don't see your meaning of master class. Do you see that? So that is subjective, something that you cannot measure at all. Because where is that meaning? It's nowhere that you can touch. No, you cannot see it. It's unseen. It's the subjective dimension that you don't see. So that is the assumption of qualitative research. It's the meaning. The subjective dimension is multiple. Meanings are multiple. My meaning is different from your meaning and your meaning and her and everybody's meaning. There are 50 meanings here. Unlike in qualitative research, so hindi mo siya kino-contrast na merong because quantitative research looks at reality as objective. Ibang dimension yung tinitingnan niya. Kaya nga sabi ko, that's why I said that these two forms of these paradigms are equally valid because they don't look at the same dimension. When they produce the knowledge, the dimension they're looking at is different. So one is not superior over the other. Equally valid sila. Kasi ang tinitingnan na dimension is different. One is objective, the other is subjective. One is in, for instance, the magnitude of how many people attended. And you count how many are women. Is it a function of gender? Coming here, is it the X, the factor is the gender? So that's something you can measurable. Is it the age? Intergenerational. Yung ilan ang bata, ilan ang matanda. Those are objective. That explains is the gender, is the age, is the discipline that explains. You know, what are those factors that explain the behavior of coming here? Attendance to a master class. That's objective, measurable. Sa qualitative, because it's interested in the meaning behind the action. So siguro before I proceed, ang knowledge that quantitative provides, ang explanation that quantitative provides is causal. You know, what causes a certain effect? Cause-effect. So kaya causal ang binibigay niyang explanation. So may mga ang theory would already tell you what are the independent variables. The theory would already tell you what are the dependent variables. What are the causes? What are the effects? So that is the knowledge provided. When I say knowledge, is the explanation. Relationship between variables, no? Causal ang explanation. Ang the qualitative research knowledge produce, anong pinoproduce na? Kini-create niya is anong binibigay niyang explanation? Contextual. The meaning behind the action. Why are you here? What's the meaning of coming here? What's the meaning of listening to a master class? Not necessarily quali, no? So ano yon? This is the meaning behind the action. Should you provide the contextual explanation. What is the content of the action, the meaning behind the action? So if the study claims to be qualitative but does not talk about meaning, so it may be in the purest sense of qualitative research, it may be just that the data are words rather than the numbers, no? Pero words pa rin, not the meaning behind a certain action. And so sometimes, may tanong din yun mamaya. Sige, sagutin ko na lang yun later. So nagkakaroon ng ganong if I may use the word misunderstanding, no? Because it's important to understand the philosophical assumption. Dahil gusto mong maintindihan yung multiplicity of meaning. That marami siya, iba-iba. That action of attending a master class, participating in a master class, it can be explained not by your sex, not by your gender, or sorry, politically correct, not by your discipline, not by your degree. That's something that can be measured. It can be explained by the meaning that you have for that particular phenomenon. So now we move. May question po ba doon sa ontological assumptions sa the nature of reality? Yung mga taga-OU, sasabihin nila sa akin, ganun na sila. So, but not really, right? This is something very elementary. Ganun, di ba? Alam natin na may meaning tayo. Alam natin na meron tayong values. We have the worldview. We have different ways of looking at things. Yan, one thing na natutunan ko kay Sir Sandy, you don't impose on someone because we have different worldviews. Whispering, nakaganon si Sir. Yun sa mga estudyante, no? Kasi when the students has chosen me to be the advisor, I would ask certain commitments. Yan, nagdi-differ kami dyan ni Sir Sandy. Kasi if those commitments are not there, maybe you have to rethink. Why are you taking me as your advisor? Rethink. So may mga commitments. So parang you give certain degree of freedom, parang ganon. Because I have a view of graduate education as something like you are training, you are educating the student, preparing the student. Well, the student has a practical knowledge. The student doesn't have the theoretical knowledge needed to do a research. So, but that's my worldview. Yes. May meron ba tayong phone? Ay, microphone?
Hello. I'm Raymond from. Ma'am, does that limit the ability of qualitative research to predict?
We'll talk about that later, okay? Can you hold on to your question? We will move on to the teleological assumption. So we are at the ontological level, yes?
You mentioned a while ago subject-object position. Now,
in the discourses earlier, here in qualitative.
That's interested to find out whether does that fit in a qualitative.
Yes, yeah. The subjects. So that's why I said earlier, the discourse of understanding, there is a subject-object position, but it's not bifurcated. You're part of it. You experience the object. Ganun ang qualitative research. That's why if we would like to create knowledge on what a master class is, I am part of it in the production of that knowledge. No? Kasama kayo lahat because I'm going to listen to your own view of what a master class is. My own view of what a master. So it's multiple. But as we are part of it, as we are part of master class, it cannot be separated from where we are or as we experience the phenomenon. So the subject-object there is still bifurcated. Kaya mamaya sa post-qual, we will talk about the transgression of the subject-object positioning. Have I answered your question? Yeah, so we're still at the ontological level. On the nature of things, do you have questions on that? So when you go to the field or you do a research, if you go, I come here to look at the objective dimension, okay. The paradigm that suit that kind of research is quantitative. Okay, I come here because I want to understand their point of view of EJK. So you go to that field to understand that subject dimension. Your view of EJK is different from the views of those whose the family members have lost their loved ones. No? So ibang-iba yung Duterte supporters would have a different view of EJK to the ones who have experience, who have a loved one. So, ganun yun. Pagpunta ka sa field, ano yung gusto mong gawin? Anong dimension ng reality ang gusto mong aralin? This is a question of that. What is the dimension of reality that you would like to study? So, decidedly, if you would like, but of course later on the post-call will question that, but decidedly, if you're looking at that objective dimension of reality, the quantitative methodology suits that kind of interest. No? Meron pa po ba? 427. So we can move on to the epistemological assumptions now. Epistemology, as I mentioned earlier, is the assumption on what counts as knowledge. No? In quantitative research, as we said earlier, there's already the theory to be tested. So knowledge is already existent. No? Nandun na yun, there's a discourse of representation. We talk about that, we talk at the deductive approach. So there's already the theory that would guide your research, predefined ang variables. Or else, wala kang explanation, you're not providing a causal explanation. Because that theory is well thought of, well studied, so it enjoys already a degree of authority. Kaya nga, ginagamit mo na siya in the study. So however, that knowledge resides saan nasan siya. Knowledge is in what community? Remember the subject object to your question. The subject is the researcher, the object, yung interest. So in the quantitative research, the assumption of where knowledge reside is, or what counts as knowledge, resides in the knowers community, the researchers. Kasi may theory na kang gusto na mag-explain, a causal explanation of the relationship of variables, or else the rigor of research cannot be observed. Ang scientific method is a very rigid, it's a very good, because it's a very logical, no, systematic way of arriving at knowledge. Kaya mag-step 1 kayo, identification of hypothesis, collecting data, and then subjecting the data to hypothesis testing, and then making a conclusion. Ganyan ang scientific research, no? So, and if you don't have the theory as an anchor, hindi siya on the question of not reliable, not valid, kasi wala kang anchor. There should be that knowledge. So what counts as knowledge is what is already there. Sa qualitative research, ang epistemological assumption, knowledge resides in those who experience the phenomenon. Ay ikaw, kay Ma'am Bench, ano ang master class? Yun ang knowledge. No? Hindi yung ano yung sinabi ng isang theory. So what the theory says about master class as a means, how would you explain learning theoretical knowledge or explaining that does not count, no, in qualitative, because what counts is as you experience it. That's an epistemological assumption. So that is consistent with the view or assumption, ontological assumption, that reality is objective, hindi ba? Kasi you can measure it, then you can subject to a certain testing. Sa kabila, sa qualitative research, the reality is subjective and therefore multiple. So knowledge resides in those experiences, therefore they are multiple. multiple yun. Therefore, there's no one, what do you call this? 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 There's no master. There's no one master. So everyone who participates in the master class is a master. I mean, pushing it to that simplicity. So what I'm saying here is that that knowledge is not in the researcher community, not in the knower, but in the research, the ED community, the one who experience the social phenomena. In our case, we're interested in that social phenomena. So are there questions on that? Kaya nga, we need a theory to be tested, and the rigor is when we observe the scientific method. So what is the rigor of qualitative research? Mamaya, usapin natin yan. No? Ito lang, punta lang muna tayo sa philosophical assumption. So, may question ba dun sa epistemological assumption? And that nagsasuffer ang qualitative research to certain discrimination because they don't look at it as knowledge. Because if you are taking that frame that knowledge resides in the researcher community, ay hindi nga knowledge yung knowledge ng participant. No? But yun na nga, there should be no pulling down. Both are means of knowing. Kasi magkaibang, they look at that dimension of reality differently. Ibang reality yung tinitingnan nitong isa. Isa, ibang reality din. Can we, diba yung silence sa semiotic tradition with this intersubjective, inaantok na maraming kung sa OU, nosebleed, Ma'am Jean. Dito. So, are there questions on that epistemological assumption? So can I take knowledge na I can proceed? If I take silence as I can proceed, we can proceed that sa question ni Raymond, the teleological assumption. So, what is the purpose of research? Magkaiba rin yung assumptions nila. Ang quantitative research, ang assumption niya ay prediction. Kaya nga, at a certain degree of probability, you can predict that the people who will come to the master class are women, assuming na there's a certain theory that explains, but maybe men, they are they want a intense discussion, maybe, no? So you can predict that 90% of the time, 95% of the time, the ones who will come to a master class will be men or be women. Because that's prediction. You can predict it at a certain degree of probability because quantitative follows the logic of probability. Yeah. So, if it's true to a sample, that will be true to the population 95% of the time. Na talagang babae ang pupunta dito o talagang lalaki. No? The question po ba doon sa for qualitative research, the purpose is understanding. Not to predict, but to understand why you're here. Kaya nga, Ems, bakit sila nandito? So I want to understand that. I have my own construction of Ems. So I within the discourse of suspicion. So this is something I want to understand because I'm not participating in a master class before except previous master class. And what is it? Because M said, Ma'am, susunod ka na. I have to go there. I have to. So yung previous master class, my meaning of it is for me to be educated of what a master class is, UPOU version. So I attended Bob's, when Bob Figueroa was the speaker. So that's my meaning of being in a master class, attending a master class. Not because I'm a woman coming here, but as a next speaker for the master class. That's my meaning of that attendance, no? So I want to understand. If you want to understand something, bakit ang mga tao sa around the community around Mount Mayon, kahit na sobrang dami na ng warning from peoples, but why don't they run away? Why don't they evacuate? So from the phenomenological perspective, because phenomenological tradition of theory also has a phenomenological tradition of qualitative research, mamaya sasabihin ko yan, by time pa, 4:36. So, because of their relationship with Mount Mayon. Mount Mayon is communicating to them, don't run yet. Si Mount Mayon ang kausap nila, not the peoples. It's not the science people. It's that Mayon up there, the other. Telling them, okay, evacuate ka na, inis na ako sa'yo, takbo ka na dyan. Or else you will experience my theory. No, it's a different explanation. You want to understand. Bakit sila hindi tumatakbo? Or bakit ba yung helper? Isip mo, there's this, ang dami-dami niyang anak. Inyat, parang matsamaha. Saya. Parang ano kaya yung experience of a mother, of having 8 children, when, you know, the daily wage is only 100 pesos. Parang there's that kind of meaning you want to understand. So that's the purpose. I don't know, Raymond, whether I was able to answer your question. So kung wala na, so that's the teleological assumption. Yung axiological assumption, may related to as mentioned, ano yung value nun? So what's the cash value? So what? Yan ang tanong ano ba naman yung qualitative research? Wala value yan, yan scientific method. So I would always say na it's still a systematic, no? So may value siya. What's the value? The axiological assumption. Ang value niyan would be in that particular community, iba-iba, no? Sa kabila, it's in the science community. When you want to develop knowledge, continue to test it. No? And lastly is the praxeological assumption. You can see here ba? Did I write here? It's here. I cannot, because I suffered from a fall last Saturday. Sa duyan, bumagsak ako. So here, praxeological assumption. Praxeology. So it refers to the object of knowledge, no? How something comes to existence. Paano nagkakaroon ng communication? Yan, parang ganun, no? So, paano nangyayari ang isang bagay? How communication, how something comes to existence. So, ang communication is, as I mentioned earlier, may mga traditions na siya. May ina-explain niya what communication is, how it's problematized. So, for qualitative research, within the communication field, communication is transmission of information. Kasi you have to measure it eh. So, dun sa traditions, yung socio-psychological, the behavior that can be measured, and in the cybernetic, the information amount, exchange, that can be measured. Ganun ang assumption niya of communication, no? How it comes to existence. It's transmission of information. It's a sending of message from source to receiver. Sa qualitative research, if in quantitative research, ang praxeological assumption, communication is information transmission. Sa qualitative research, ang praxeological assumption niya, meaning ang communication is interpretation, creation. But tayo nag-uusap dito, we are together creating meaning of what qualitative research is. So, ganun ang communication is a process of interpretation. It's not a process of information transmission. Na nandito ako, but both are valid. You can still look at it that way. Kasi ako may message, ako ang source, kayo ang receiver. So you can measure the amount of information that you've gotten out of you receive from a source like me. So ganun yung quantitative. Kasi ma-measure mo. Yung behavior na inaantok, ma-measure mo yun. Ilan ang inantok. Ano ang mga fields ng mga yun. Kasi imagine mo itong si Ems, nag-invite, ay kam naman ko. So, you know, that thing, right? So, but for qualitative research, ang praxeological assumption niya, communication is the process of interpretation. Nag-i-interpret tayo lahat. Ang interpretation niyo of what I am saying is different from my own interpretation of what I wanted to say. No, from the rhetorical, may intent. So, iba-iba yun. So, those are the philosophical assumptions. May question po ba? Because We will move on dun sa 41. Always, meron po ba? We will move on to the schools of traditions of qualitative research. So, nasa quali parang tayo, I don't know, baka hindi ko na rin ma-discuss yung post-qual, no? So, meaning, ang qualitative research that I'm telling you was Saludadez, pre-2015. Or pre-2014 or 2000, I don't know. So, but, okay. Sorry hindi nyo rin yan masyadong mamabasa kasi yan, kinapture ko lang yan sa aking klase sa COM 391. So, there are, basically, these are not just, no? 1, 2, 3, 4 traditions of qualitative research: phenomenology, symbolic interactionism, ethnography, and ethnomethodology. Lahat sila I would like to provide an explanation of the meaning behind the action. Pero paano sila nag-iiba-iba? How do they differ? What's their differences? Is where to locate meaning. In the phenomenological tradition, meaning is in the lived experience. No. So, masterclass ulit as example. So, as CMs organizing a masterclass. So, ang meaning niya of that is because of the, ipapakwento mo sa kanya how do you start a masterclass? How do you organize it? How do you force people to speak? Joke lang, Enza. How do you invite people to be the speaker? So it's her lived experience. Maintindihan mo yung meaning ni Ems of organizing a masterclass. If you would like to look at it from the phenomenological tradition, yung kanyang lived experience as a PhD student in DevCom in UPLB and as the researcher at UPOU. So tinitingnan mo yung lived experience na yan to be able to explain why she organizes a master class. You look at that lived experience. For symbolic interactionism, so meaning pa rin ang tinitingnan. Remember, ang qualitative research interest is to understand the meaning behind the action. So, where is meaning located? It is in the, of course, in the interaction. Very common yung the significant other, no? So, may isang estudyante at the master's level, this is one to understand, no? Enrollment in agriculture as a degree program. Kasi nagkakaroon ng decrease sa kanyang university. There's this decrease of enrollment in BSA in that particular university. So she wanted to understand that decrease or not, what is the action there is not enrolling. Sabi ko sa kanya, ang tingnan mo is the enrolling. Yung mga nag-enroll, hindi yung hindi nag-e-enroll. Look at their meaning. Why are they enrolling in the agriculture course? So symbolic interactionism is to look at their interaction with their teachers in high school. Their interaction, so yung meaning na yon, behind the action, maiintindihan mo yon by looking at their interaction with their family, with their peers, interaction with their teachers in high school. Kaya significant others ang tawag, commonly said. Kasi ang teacher is the significant others. But I nag-choose nitong particular course na to. Kasi yung teacher ko ng high school, for instance, attended a training in UPLB in 1978-79. So, pagdating niya, so, she talked about development communication. Bago. Parang gano'n, no? So, that is my significant other when I chose. Tapos si mami din, parang yun. Tapos pagdating dito, ayoko na. So, ayoko pumunta. So, anyway, but then my interaction with my professors in DevCom, that interaction, magstay ka dito sa DevCom. Yun. So, and I'm that action of staying, that action of choosing a program, can be understood by the meaning, by that interaction with the significant other. Naging, nabigyan ako ng magandang picture of what the outcome is. Yeah, parang ganun, no? Of my high school teacher. Jin. Tapos pagdating sa UPCAT, ito ang is-choose mo na si Mami din. Yan. Walang iba. So, they are the people, yun yung interaction. If you look at my conversation with my mom, if you look at my conversation with my teacher in high school, that explain, of choosing a course. So, ganun din yung nakita niya. Yung kasing family niya has a good value of what agriculture is. So, nag-choose siya ng agriculture. So, kita, there's a different way of providing an explanation. Normally, ba't nag-decrease? Walang pera sa agriculture. Minimeasure, kano salary? So, yung mga ganun, no? The observable, measurable. May ginagawa yung ganong study. But a way of providing an alternative explanation is to understand the meaning behind that action. So, that is symbolic interactionism. For ethnography naman, meaning is in the culture, UPOU. For instance, you want to understand certain things. So you look at the culture of Open University faculty. Why are we always happy? why we hold on to UPOU? That act of being in an open university, it's an act, being there, making that decision to stay. What is that meaning? What's the meaning behind it? It's look at the culture. Tinitingnan mo, ay nice. Because, sir, it's not because you're here, Sir Lexa. When I joined UPOU in 2004, kasi nasa UPLB ako before, sorry, moment. So, maybe I should not say that. And so the culture, sabi ni Sir, yes, can I pursue? Would you allow me to pursue yung theoretical pursuit ko? Alam niyo, sir, iba po kasi yung scholarly pursuit ko. Yes. Sabi si Sir Lex, gusto kong aralin to. Yes. By all means, aralin mo yan. So that culture, we still have it now. That's the culture. It explains why you're keeping yourself, apart from me, my understanding of being called in this university, is that culture. So maintindihan mo yung culture sa OU. No. Na kahit retired ka na, ba't nandiyan ka? So, because we enjoy the company of one another. I cannot imagine an OU without the two of them in the faculty meeting. I cannot imagine that this is defense without the two of them in the panel. So the culture there, because of the respect for what you say, you are considered a colleague. Pero at the time, maybe I was the youngest at the Doctor of Communication. Maybe until pumasok si John, no, she's not teaching that, but still, parang ako pa rin yata yung youngest in the faculty teaching. Naku, si Sir Lamy sabi niyan. But this is just an example of the meaning behind the action, looking at the culture. So look at their everyday life. So ano bang ginagawa sa OU? Some universities would come here and get interested. So what do you do when you design a course? When you hold your classes in a virtual classroom? So that's the everyday life of a teacher. No? I enjoy it to the max. I don't know, tanongin niyo yung mga estudyante ko from the other end of the cyber location. So for ethnomethodology, meaning is in the practice. I always use this in my students na aking advices na, for instance, paano mo maintindihan why kahit nagkabalding luha na, no? I engage them in a video conferencing. It's a must for me. Kasi ang estudyante ng UPOU, they are scattered around the globe. No? They are in all continents, I would tell. So, building research capability online is not easy. If it's difficult, you have to tell your teachers in residential. Teaching research is not that easy because the discourse is different. How much more in a technology-mediated education? So how is it possible to build research capability online or at a distance? I would always tell my students, like, if you would like to see the practices I do, I have two practices. As an example, I require my students as a practice, prepare a primer, a one-page primer. What is the tradition of theory where you're situating your research? What is your research question? Based on that one-page primer, I would have an understanding where the student is and help and guide the student how to arrive at a proposal. No, that is a practice I do, having a primer. And then another one is video conferencing. I have to have a video conferencing with them. Ayan, so you know that at the master's program, no? So we had a video conferencing. It's a practice. So ano yun? If you want to understand mentoring, the act of mentoring, how do you want to understand the act of mentoring? You look at the practice. No? Because building research capability online is a challenge. So look at that meaning, why kahit nga nagkakandaiyak ang mga estudyante, if it's difficult for the students, it's equally difficult for the advisor, you know. So that practice will give you, looking at the practice, yun yung data na kinokollect mo. So when I say where meaning is located, is where do you collect the data? So look at the practice and then understand that mentoring, or what mentoring is in the context of technology-mediated education. So, just for my students lang yan. Okay, 4:53, 7 minutes to go. No, sabi mo sa akin 3 to 5. Okay, now there were questions. I wanted to talk about post-qual, but you know, at this point, I don't think I will. We need another 2 hours for that, so I'll skip it. But just to say, yung post-qual questions all of these traditions of qualitative research. No, na anti-methodological, yan ang aking understanding. No? You know, where was it? There's this Russian, I think in the US last March, I attended the qualitative research on management and organization nga sa University of New Mexico, sa Albuquerque, New Mexico, sa US. And so I presented my, this is an essentialist kind of thing, but abductive, no? And you know, this Russian is like raising his eyebrow because he is a post-qual. What is a post-qual? And then, so I was na-challenge ako, ano ba yung research niya na yan? Yabang-yabang, ha? Kailangan ko matutunan yan. I have to understand that as well. But this is just a joke. I mean, I always take the stance of a learner. And yung just a joke, I say, yabang. Really, you know, he wanted to understand the the Nobel laureates. What, without any question at all, going to the field, contacting the Nobel laureate around the world, or within his reach, and just go there, you know, without any question. And his becoming. So what he shared was his becoming, how he learned. So that becomes the post-qual. Yung what he is learning from this Nobel laureate. Kaya talaga namang may case siya. Ako ba na may papansinin ng Nobel laureate, no? So in his case, talagang, oh yeah, then I approach him, I learned a lot from you. Sabi ko, because walang particular method, walang assumption, just being with the Nobel laureate without question at all. And remember the discourse of vulnerability, vulnerability, correct? The communication is impossible, and there is no you continue to revise yourself even as a researcher. Nandun din yung revision mo as a researcher. Okay, so that's, it may be limited understanding of what post-qual is. But I'm attending another one hopefully next year so that I can understand more of post-qual. You want to attend, but tapos na kasi yung paper submission of abstract and paper in Edinburgh, in UK. Yung reflexive methodology may be a precursor of a post-qual. Reflexive because we always go back and forth. Yun ang sinasabi na you go back and forth. Ito naman, parang wala siyang going back and forth because it's a method. Anti-method sa aking point of view. Ganun ang post-qual mo, anti-method. No going back and forth. It's understanding, laureate talagang up there. Alright. Maybe if you just are interested to understand some of the qualitative research I've done, just to put some authority to what I'm doing and to what I'm saying, these are some of those. Very first one, long time before, 2001, seeing our quantitative counterparts, construction of qualitative research in a roundtable discussion. Kasi I use this in DevCom 399. They wanted an example on how a question is asked, no? And what are the data collected, how data analysis is done. So, phenomenological tradition yan. Because ako, at saka si Prime, as we experience it at the time, research on research management, critical tradition, discourse of suspicion. How was research management defined? What voices were represented? In what ways as perspectives or voices are marginalized or erase other forms of that? So these are some of the examples. I don't think I have to go through them. There are a number of them. At UPOU, you have to take on an admin work. While you are very free to explore, what limits you is the time because you also are an administrator. So no one's doing, no? We are in that situation. So, sometimes, somehow, there's this tension between academic and admin work. Inimical, that's how I describe it. So, hindi din naman din ganun kadami of what I have done. Yeah, these are my students. My very first student, communication apprehension is a cultural phenomenon at the ethnographic study of an ESL. What explains communication apprehension? What is the meaning of communication apprehension to Chinese ESL students? Yung isa mediated in a methodological study of Asian. Doon sa dalawa, may pagka-methodological ako doon. Pero yung mga kasunod ng estudyante, talagang pinupush ko sila to do a theoretical work, phenomenological, socio-cultural, and then symbolic interactionism. This is what I was telling you about. This is a master's student, communication decision making, a symbolic interaction study of choosing agriculture as an academic program. Another master's student, communication and social order, a mother's critical autoethnography of life with a child with Down syndrome. And then, of course, ito na, yung mga estudyante ko na really decided na they will be theoretical. Communicative constitution of hospitality organization, a ventriloquial analysis of best service. Si, what's her name? Si Torres. Itong isa natapos na to, pinatpalitan ko lang yung animatization. The Agency of Strategic Planning Voice in universities organizing a study of implication affairs. Okay, so that may be about interest to you. Maybe what is of interest to you is the questions you ask. So the questions you ask now, it's 5 o'clock, but we try, are you still interested in the questions you ask? O nasagot na yon? So I put them I organize them into sets. No, attend this masterclass question, set 1 until set 7, no? What is qualitative research? Nasagot ba yon? What are the common misconceptions about qualitative research? May isa lang tayong na-mention, no? When data are words, they are not necessarily qualitative research. It's qualitative research if the interest is in the meaning behind the action. How qualitative? Siguro naman tagal na oras natin inusap yan, no? Set 2. Philosophical assumptions of the qualitative research relative to the traditions of com theory siguro na-mention ko na rin yan when I began with the traditions of com theory. But there's this book by Brian Taylor and Thomas Lindlof, the Merito in particular. This is the third edition. I'm not very sure. Si Brian, the last time I saw him was in Egypt, in Romania, in ano nga bang city sa Romania? The capital city is in Bucharest. So that was the last time I saw Brian. But this is the qualitative communication research method by Brian Taylor and Thomas Lindlof. This is the third edition, but there is, I believe, a more recent edition that answers that question, yung vis-a-vis or relative to the traditions of com theory. What philosophical assumption? These are philosophical assumptions of the paradigm, not the research design. No, just wanted to note on it. It's not assumption for qualitative research, but of the paradigm of that world view. How to choose the appropriate philosophical assumption? Oh, you don't choose it. You have to understand it so that you will be guided what dimension of reality you would like to study and what kind of question you would like to ask. How does one affect, causal din ito, no? The result of qualitative research. So it will actually, I believe now, what knowledge is produced. So if your philosophical assumption fits the quantitative, which you produce a causal explanation. Sa context. Set 3, what are the different views, perspective of qualitative research and so what are qualitative methods for additional guides on different, siguro na-mention ko na how they differ, how can be used as a design in action research. If your interest is in the meaning behind the action, so you can use it in your action research. I believe maraming gumagamit niyan, no? So I think this is the research design. Qualitative research would not have the same research design as quantitative research, but they have the traditions. So an ethnographic research would have its own rigor. Phenomenological research would have its own rigor. How to address questions of validity? Okay, this is a good question because in qualitative research, there is no, the concept of validity is not, although some qualitative research books would mention it. For quantitative research, how do you look at the rigor? You look at the reliability of the instruments and their validity, meaning reliable yung measurement. Now, if you want to measure apprehension, that instrument should be able to measure apprehension, not anxiety. Ganun yung validity, concept of validity. It measures what it wants to measure. No, yan mga yan. Natutunan ko yan kay Sir Lex during my master's. And then yung reliable is yung instrument should be able to measure anxiety again and again. It's like a weighing scale. It's used to measure your weight, not your height. So parang ganun din yung reliable yung instrument mo. Baka you may be ganun sa quanti, no? Kaya nga, kung titingnan mo yung time difference of quantitative and qualitative, quantitative research spends more time designing the research in the instrument. 90% of the time you devote to that, maybe 80. And the 20 you do in your analysis and conclusion, yung time that you devote. Qualitative research is the opposite. 90% of the time nasa field ka. No? Kahit wala ka pang tanong. Punta ka na dun if you want to understand. Try to make sense. Because once you know, once you understand, madali na kasi magsulat. And ano ang tinitingnan? It's not reliability or validity, but plausibility of your interpretation of that meaning. Baka sabi nyo, I attended the master class last time. You said na, just this is for the sake lang naman ng discussion. No? Kunyari, you said na, ikaw as a researcher, sabi mo, nung inaral mo ako, I joined the master class last time kasi gusto kong matuto kay Bobby. But actually, ang meaning ko, gusto kong maintindihan what is a masterclass because I'm the next speaker. So, plausible dapat yung interpretation. Yung dinerive mo na meaning should be plausible. It makes sense to the member community, to the scholarly community, no? Kaya pag ang estudyante kapag when the student presents the thesis, we look at the plausibility of the meaning na derive or nag-surface din sa study. What is a construct variable? There's no such thing as variable in qualitative research because it's not interested in the variable, in the what is measurable. What is the difference of finding sample size? For qualitative research, N is equal to 1. Depth of meaning, thick description. That yung meaning na yon talagang to be plausible, you have to have a thick description. It does not mean the number of words you use. It's the depth of meaning. In quantitative research, the sample size should be properly chosen, so that your conclusion that 95% of the time, the result in the sample size, that you have this confidence that what is true to the sample size, the logic of probability, is true to the population. So N is equal to 30 and above. Yeah. But for qualitative, there's no such thing as sample size. The participants to the study are the ones who will give you that understanding of what is, yung kung ano man yung inaaral mo. No? May mga question din dito sa akin, may animal. Does it affect the sana? Set 5, how do we write a qualitative research? So wala na tayong masyadong time doon. It's in the first person. I can only tell you of the first person construction of knowledge, the text that you write, because it is you who listen to the story. Kaya yung qualitative research, hindi mo yan ma-delegate to your RAs. You yourself do the study. Kasi ikaw ang intindi sa kanila, ikaw yung dapat makinig. No? So you cannot, sinabi nung aking RA, ang meaning po ay, hindi ko yan papaniwalaan. I have to listen. I have to listen to that particular story myself. No? So, because when I write it, there's this, in quantitative, you write with a third person. Because you have to ensure there's no threat, there's a claim of objectivity. There's no bias. In quantitative, that's very important. That bias is not given a space. That's the opposite for qualitative. Bias is glorified, no? Because this is acknowledged. It is a bias because that's the subject position. It is given due importance, but it doesn't mean. So that's why when you write it, you are saying, this is my own construction. This is not their construction. This is my own construction of what evacuation is to the community of Mount Mayon. My own construction is in the first person. So you have to have this degree of humility that there are other alternative narratives. This is just one of the many narratives. So, how to write? Meron din naman akong book dito, Essentials of Publishing Qualitative Research. Then, how qualitative can be useful to public school teachers? Now I am looking at the public school teachers by their symbol. Because the public school teachers, what? They wear uniform. The symbolic, the symbiotic tradition. No? So you use it when you want to understand why a certain pupil is not coming to class. Or why a certain student, for instance, when you say write it vertically, the student would write it horizontally. So understand from the student's point of view. So that's how, I don't know whether I answered that question. To what extent has qualitative research influenced this? See, of course, the policymakers value numbers. But policy making would be informed, helped, if you understand from the point of view of those who are to whom the implementation or a policy is directed at. Take from their point of view the implementation of uh, ano yung sa mga pinagbibigay cash for peace, the implementation of for peace, no? So titingnan yan from their point of view. Look at it, the policy implementation. So therefore you can or are able to derive or certain guidelines para yung sa susunod na implementation, huwag mo nang isama yung nagki-create ng so much disparity or mas lalo silang naghihirap, yan mga ganun. You would be able to understand it from their point of view. What would be the most appropriate qualitative research approach for research in patterns of agricultural research? To be not looking at the specificity of there. Do you remember qualitative research? Reality is multiple. So there's no one best. So most appropriate. It's how you ask the question. Are you interested in what particular thing? So what is important is you produce plausible result. What are the practical suggestions to successfully undertake qualitative research? I would like to relate it with the topic of this talk. If you understand the philosophical assumptions, you would be able to do a qualitative research. So that ends my talk.
Inabduct ba kayo ni Jean? Were you abducted? Ako, ginutom eh. Okay. We have a couple of more parts or sections to this master class. Dr. Librero, Professor Librero, will be giving a reaction to Jean's presentation. And then we could open for a few more questions, Jean, from the audience. But before I give the microphone over to Professor Emeritus Librero, my task is to give a short summary. Okay. Jean walked us through the ontological, epistemological, teleological, axiological, praxeological assumptions of qualitative research, and in so doing, contrasting it to the assumptions in quantitative research, where we are, most of us, the senior persons in this room are more familiar with. Right. And then she proceeded to review the different types of qualitative research, right? Tama pa ba yung memory ko? She reminded us in her discussion on the different communication traditions that not one tradition is superior to the other, no? That they are all valid paths to the known. Okay, that quantitative is not superior to qualitative. Qualitative is not superior to quantitative, no? And she reminded us also that we could deconstruct ourselves, and nagdedebate nga kami kanina dito ni Ems eh. We could deconstruct our positions vis-a-vis one another within this master class. Unfortunately, we cannot deconstruct our salaries at the same time, right? O mas mataas pa rin ang sweldo ni G. Pero kay Ems kanina eh. Multiple realities o anong height po? Ano sweldo? In an ideal world, maybe I could think that I'm taller. Okay, just a couple more rebuttals. Siguro for kasi Jean made reference to yung kasi there's an ongoing debate among us here in the UP Open University. O sana nga, given this presentation, you would be convinced that the UP Open University is not just, it's not just a delivery system. It's not just distance learning. No, our openness, our openness is bringing forth this this bringing of or this exchange of ideas. And I dare say that we should also be known for our disciplinal work. This is very real if you're in the university. Well, anyway, yun na nga, yung may ongoing debate kami ngayon sa paggamit ng term na knowledge creation. Now, from the point of view of knowledge management, there is a backstory there that the phrase knowledge management was partly introduced because of some people's or some academics' reaction to the term creation. It's like similar to creationism, you could make something out of nothing. And this is the reason why we don't say theory creation, we say theory building or theory construction. That's why I would rather use the term knowledge generation. Pero Open University nga tayo, so we talk of co-creation with our students. So, well, to me, we could co-create knowledge products, but knowledge itself, yon, that's one tawag to clarification. The other is yung Montreal School nga ni Jean. Kasi nga sabi namin, ikaw taga Montreal School ka, kami ni Mendy taga Makiling School. If you believe that organizations are emergent from communication, or that actually organizations are really formed by communication, then the Makiling School believes that development is a creation. Could we say that? It's constitutive of communication. That is we feel, the very essence of development communication. And development may be a communication process. Think about that. And now, our Professor Emeritus to give a reaction to Jean's talk, si Dr. Libero.
I didn't realize that I am supposed to give a reaction. And so my reaction is I'm surprised. Well, anyway, I have no intention of summarizing or paraphrasing something that is excellently presented. However, I have just one aspect in the presentation that deals with my line of expertise, visual design. Jean has an explanation for it, of course. But I was trained in a traditional way of doing things, that when you are 50 meters away from a billboard or poster, you should be able to read this kind of word. That's okay. I used to do that, really. But then again, there are reasons for it's so very easy to just transfer a typewritten material to. But normally, dapat mas malaki kasi katulad nung sa akin hindi na ako nakakakita nga pinahihirapan mo pa akong. So, but all right. So in any case, as Dr. Saludadez has explained, we have two approaches here, basically, qualitative and quantitative. There are those who ask me what would be a preferable approach. And I've always answered this. I answered this as early as the conference of the Association of Development Communication Teachers in their conference in Cabagan, Isabela, many years ago. And I said, I really don't care what kind of research approach you employ, qualitative or quantitative, as long as you're able to explain to me correctly what the problem is. And that's all there is to it. Do not make your work extra difficult for yourself. And while you should or can use the right terminologies, make sure that you are really using the right terminologies and you understand what they are. I was viewing an interview with Eddie Garcia earlier today. And he has very simple answers to complicated questions. And he has 1, 2, 3 word answers. Very easy to understand. Pagkatapos may kasama pang tawa. Alam naman ninyo si Eddie Garcia, magaling sa ganyan. Sabi niya, I do not know why I went into acting, but what I know is that before I went to film, I was in the military. He was a sergeant in the Philippine Constabulary. That's why mas magaling siya sa 45 kaysa kay FPJ. But the important thing in this session, I think, is that we have, now for some beginning, but for others probably beyond beginning, of our own understanding of what we mean by qualitative or quantitative research approach. Now, sooner or later, you're going to make a decision as to what kind of approach you're going to do when you start working on your thesis. If you have not, if you are done with your thesis, probably you have decided for yourself that you're not going to do it again. My suggestion would be, it's not a question of doing it again. It's a question of what kind of learning did you get from that experience? And that's not going to be the same as the kind of learning you're going to get in another experience, maybe later. So this is how we develop in the field of research. So there was enough mention here of these younger people used to be my students. Pero ang ano na nila sa akin ngayon is I am knowledgeable about old things, not new ones. So I listen to them when it comes to new things, but I tell them what is when it comes to old ones. So ganun lang yan. So in the area of research, I listen to them. Pag si Gina nagsasabi, qualitative, sandali ka ako, okay, maganda nga yan, pero kailangan bang laging qualitative na lang tayo lahat? Somebody must do qualitative, somebody must do quantitative. But the point for many is, can you do both? Which I believe you can. Nasa sa inyo na yon. But the point really is that dun sa presentation ni Dr. Saludadez, nakita natin dyan kung saan ang dapat na orientation natin. Ano bang gusto natin maging orientation natin? Ganun lang naman yun. Ganun lang naman yun. Okay, so for everybody, do not forget the primers or the pointers on visual design. Kayo, magpe-present kayo ng inyong sarili mga PowerPoints. Huwag ninyong pabayaan yung mga members ng audience niyo. Mumurahin kayo sa likuran niyo. Hindi ko naman minura si Jim. So, yun lang. Thank you, Dr. Saludadez, for such a good presentation.
Maraming salamat. Idolo ko talaga si Sir Lex. Pareho kami na relo. Questions, please. Questions. Let us take advantage of Dr. Saludadez's time. I'm sure that you have many many questions. Kanina nga binulo ko kay Eds. Uy, si Gina ka miniskirt. Ano daw? Multiple realities. Okay. Now, okay, the question is, what is she half or half? Is she half clothes or half? Okay. Baka madali tayo ng mga feminists dito. Sorry. Just kidding. Yes, just kidding. Questions, please, questions. Seriously, I'm sure that you have. Yes, sir. At the back. May mikropono tayo doon. Please introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hello po. Dr. Jean, thank you for that very insightful talk. My name is Miggy from UPLB. I'm an MS DevCom student. And my question is, what personal advice po can you give to students, young students to be particular, who want to pursue qualitative research? When I say young, I mean undergrads or even graduate students who want to pursue qualitative research for the first time. Kasi po on a personal note, I consider myself as a hardcore quantitative researcher. And actually, I've only recently had an appreciation of qualitative research because my cognate at UPLB is sociology, and my exposure to postmodern theories have given me an appreciation of qualitative research. And for me, you really have I appreciate qualitative research as you really have to have a mature you have to possess a certain level of maturity, and probably you already have to have a lot of experience in life already, because in qualitative research, right, you have to interpret social phenomena or communication phenomena. And if you have a shallow outlook of life, or of course that's going to affect your filter, your interpretation of reality, of social phenomena. And many undergrads really now want to pursue qualitative research. And personally for me, I have I'm doubting myself because I feel that I'm not mature enough to conduct qualitative research. So what advice po can you give to us young people? Yeah.
Thank you for your question, young man. When you go to the field in qualitative research, you don't go there as a sage, SAGE. You go there as a student who doesn't know anything, because you want to learn from the one who experienced that social phenomenon. So just being that stance of a student, not a sage. Yung sinasabi na dapat may maturity na and many things. No, in fact, it's an advantage. Because when you go there, you want to learn. When I did my dissertation, I went to the field to tell them that I want to learn from you. So if you have that stance of a student rather than a sage, that should be sufficient not sufficient. It's the starting point, having that stance. The other thing, you have to look at it as a becoming. Na parang from quanti to nagiging quali. No, it's a matter, you have to read a lot, acquire the language. In my case, it took long, You have to acquire the language, understand the whole the assumptions in particular, understand, read a lot of studies, empirical material on that particular topic that you would like to look into. But it should not, I did not mention about the role of literature to the in data collection. You just have to know the known for you to know the unknown. No, it should not define what you will be looking in the field. Should tell you what is not there. But how you would construct the text, you also have to take that stance that this is just one of the stories, as I said. So you also, if the more mature ones, or maybe the what's the term, the seasoned ones, no? Pareho din yun. Pag pumunta ka sa field, dapat student ka. Nandun ka to learn. And nandun yung openness. And also, yung interpretation is a construction of a young man in the field. It has to be said at the beginning of the study. It should have that. So I believe even undergrad students can make use of the qualitative research as an approach, as a paradigm within which they will view that particular ano. Parang hindi ko siya naging issue to me. It was never an issue from sa tingin ko. And you prepare by reading a lot. You really have to read a lot. Learn from those who know, those who have the experience.
Okay, other questions? Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. My name is Terry. I'm Miggy's classmate. In contrast with him, I'm a hardcore qualitative researcher. Pero this is the first time that I've heard of post-qual. Was that a new thing or was that a new tradition? Because I haven't read much about it in the literature.
I understand you came late, right? Yung post-qual is, as I mentioned, no, does not look at as to the methods to provide value to the knowledge produced. Ganun ang post-qual. There's no, it's an anti-method. Huh? It's a movement. You see, the qualitative, the phenomenological tradition is a reaction to the positivist. Positivism, positively using what is used in the natural sciences, and then to post-positivist, this is the phenomenological brand of qualitative research, and then they ewan ko kung inabot mo my description of the different discourses, no, in com theory and the traditions of com theory. Post-qual would not make use of all those methods of those particular traditions. I made an example of this Russian who studied the Nobel laureate. Went to the field without any question. Went to the field without any method. But at the end, meron siyang knowledge na na-contribute. And that is the creative part of it, I believe. So wala siyang method. It's I don't know whether I would be questioned by the qualitative researchers community. If you want to read the work of Sulani, because she is the speaker, she was a speaker when I attended a conference, and next year in Edinburgh, she will also be the keynote. So she has written a lot on post-qual. Actually, it's available. Pag-check ko nga sa so much writing on that already. In fact, may mga precursor, yung question nga ni Pam earlier, on the reflexivity, Matt Alveson, and marami na rin yan. It's a movement, it's a reaction. Have you read Kuhn Thomas Kuhn's structure of scientific knowledge, the normal science and the abnormal science, you can look at it that way.
Okay, other questions? Questions, please. Trina? Okay, questions? Questions? Wala na ba? Kakain na ba tayo? Oo. Tatanungin ko lang, yung mga agencies po na represented dito, either from, is there anyone from research agencies? Meron tayo sa Philippine Carabao Center, right? Oh, the rest are DepEd, UPLB, UPOU. Jean, how do we? Well, in the academe, qualitative research is mainstream. No, it's really part of the mainstream. But considering, well, it's a normal science, yes. But yes, why isn't it informing operations, policy, administration, compared with quantitative research studies?
I'm not very sure, sir, kung ano yung context that you're talking about. Kasi of all the many conferences that I have attended, parang it's a mainstream when it comes to like research on the management and organization, research on administrative science. Parang it should, I mean, it's there. Now, is it the context of the Philippines?
Like,
you're
for
talking
instance, you are the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration. Do we have any qualitative research that would inform your policy or your decision making or your operations?
I live it on a daily basis, sir.
Lived experience na.
No, I think the basic issue is let's look at the user. Let's look at the user. Ano ba yung gusto nila? Kasi if we look at our decision makers today, ang orientation ng mga ito hindi qualitative research eh. Puro ano yan, puro empirical basis ang kanilang ginagamit sa decision making. So they go by the numbers. They really, many decision makers really do not put a clear handle on the non-quantifiable information that is needed in making decisions. So yun ang malaking problema natin. So those who are fighting for qualitative research, for example, this should be the number one issue that you should deal with if you want to be involved in policy science. Because policy science today, they are highly quantitative oriented personnel. So yun ang ating titingnan muna. Because in the academy, there's no question about it, mainstream yan. In fact, what qualitative research today, the position of qualitative research today was about the position of quantitative research a few years back. So magkaano na sila, nagpangabot na yung dalawa eh. So kung sino ang gagamit ng information, yun ang titingnan natin. Kung ang gagamit ng information kilala natin na quantitatively oriented, huwag mo siyang bigyan ng report ng qualitative research. Wala siyang gamit dun. On the other hand, if you know a decision maker to be oriented to qualitative analysis, huwag mo siyang bigyan ng basta numero lang. Bigyan mo ng interpretation yung number na yon. Ganun lang.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Other questions? Questions? Oh.
Hi, Ma'am Jean. Huwag kayong maniwala na napilitan lang si Ma'am Jean na maging speaker. Kasi alam nyo, ano yung sinasabi mo kanina, Ma'am Jean? Meaning behind the action. Ano yung UPOU culture? Alam nyo po, kaya marami kaming public service dito. Kasi ang mga officials namin, kagaya ni Ma'am Jean, sobrang tindi ng suporta. So, nung umuo siya, I'm sure sincere siya na gusto niya talagang gawin ito. Okay, pero ito Ma'am Jean, narinig ko na ang makiling perspective. So, tatanong po namin sana yung Montreal perspective. So, ito po ay assignment namin sa hours. Pero, ma'am, nasagot na namin. Pero hanggang ngayon, nagtatalo-talo pa rin kami ng classmates.
Yeah, but
Apa.
the Montreal School actually,
No, kidding lang, ma'am.
so the abductive approach for research, the Montreal School, the approach used in this school is abductive, never not inductive.
Ma'am, hindi. May
deductive.
tanong kasi ako, may isang tanong sa amin dun sa klase, which is ang tagal namin pinagtatalunan nung nagbiyahe kami ng Monday. So, at kahit hanggang ngayon nga, pinagtatalunan pa rin namin ng classmates namin. So, ang tanong, ma'am, is, given the contrasting epistemological basis of empiricist and interpretive research traditions, how will you justify the argument that there also exists natural objective things that are not interpreted or does not require interpretative perspective?
I think clear naman yon sa ano. I think very clear yun in the discussion of the ontological assumption. I don't see that as a question
Okay.
really
So,
because
okay, natin
it's
na.
very clear at the beginning.
May iba pang comments? Natawa sila. Ma'am, you have question? Okay, so satisfied na. Okay, si Sir. Ay, okay. So nawala na si Sir Lex. So we have to close the program. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Jean. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga dumating. And of course, wala na si Sir Lex, so I would like to request our Dean, Dr. Alexander Flor, to give this certificate and the token of appreciation to Ma'am Jean. This token is from the DevCom 399 students. It represents kung saan mga nanggaling, merong from north to south, from ano, saan si Ana? From Marinduque, from Nueva Ecija. Let me read first, sir. So, the UP Open University, Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, and the UPOU Alumni Foundation, Inc., certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Jean A. Saludadez for her invaluable contribution as a thought leader during the masterclass on understanding the philosophical assumptions of qualitative research, held today at the Oblation Hall. Signed, Jerry Donato, President, UPOU AFI, and of course, Dean Sandy Flor. So maraming salamat po. Sir Sandy, napa-oo mo na ba si Ma'am Jean for the napa-oo na ba si Ma'am Jean for the November 22 session? Okay, so makikisuyo na lang po, may evaluation po tayo dun sa kit ninyo. We need that para we can further improve dun sa master class at para din sa mga susunod na topics. May mga certificates po, pakikuha na lang po sa registration. And yung food po natin nandito pa rin. Please have some.